Everton agree a deal to sign Jack Grealish on a season-long loan from Manchester City, which includes an option to buy for £50 million. Tottenham have approached City about signing Savinho, but City are adamant the winger is not for sale. Hi, good evening. Welcome along to the Transfer Show on what is a really disappointing day for Crystal Palace. We'll look at what their demotion to the Conference League means for their transfer plans with our chief correspondent, Kaveh Solokol. We'll also be live to St James's Park for the very latest on Alexander Isak's future, just 5 days before they start their Premier League campaign. And we'll bring you details of what could be a 10th summer signing for newly promoted Sunderland. Right, let's start with Everton, who've agreed a deal with Manchester City to sign Jack Grealish on a season-long loan. Vinny O'Connor is at Everton's training ground and joins us now. Vinny, very good evening. Right, David Moyes, very vocal about needing new signings, so he must be a very happy man today.
I think so, Mike, particularly when you look at the quality that he's adding to his squad, certainly in Jack Grealish on that season-long loan. And as you mentioned earlier, Everton having that option to buy Jack Grealish at the end of that loan deal for £50 million as well. His medical is already underway. That medical got underway this afternoon, and we're expecting that in the next 24 hours or so, Jack Grealish to be announced as an Everton player effectively on that season-long loan. And this is a coup for Everton. Let's be frank about this now, because there have been a number of clubs interested in taking Jack Grealish, a number of clubs that wanted to sign him, but it was Everton who were first to make their move and put their money on the table as well. And feasibly, Jack Grealish could have waited until later in the transfer window. He could have waited right up until the transfer deadline to see what other opportunities presented themselves to him. But at the same time, he's desperate to get back playing regular first-team football. He is desperate to get back in the England squad. We know that as well, particularly ahead of the World Cup, even as early as the games against Andorra and Serbia next month. We all know how disappointed he was, of course, to have missed out on the England squad for the Euros as well. And clearly, a repeat of last season at Manchester City, where he played 32 games across all competitions, starting just 7 games in the Premier League, would not do his international chances any favours whatsoever. And I suppose that was in City's thinking as well, to a certain extent, in leaving him out of the squad for the Club World Cup and giving him a bit of an opportunity, really, to sort out his future. Now, in 2021, David Moyes described Jack Grealish as possibly the best player in the Premier League at that time. Now Jack Grealish is going to get the opportunity to reignite his career by playing under David Moyes, and we're also expecting further new arrivals at Everton between now and that transfer deadline. We know they still want to strengthen. They want reinforcements at right back, defensive midfield, even attacking wide right as well, at the very least. We know about those bids that have been turned down by Southampton for Tyler Dibbling. At the same time, Everton have looked at another option down the right-hand side as well in Abdul Fatawu from Leicester City. So we'll expect developments along those fronts over the coming weeks as well. But at least, and you kind of touched on this right at the start there, Mike, Everton are getting closer to the number of players that David Moyes felt he needed to get in during this summer transfer window.
Vinny O'Connor from Everton's training ground, thank you. So, Kaveh, you've got a bit more on Grealish. Tell us.
Yeah, I mean, the situation is interesting regarding what Jack Grealish is going to do now. Because normally, when we see a player like Jack Grealish, who's on big wages at a club like Manchester City, and it's obvious that he's going to leave on loan, what we see is the move happened very, very late in the window. For instance, last summer, you remember Jadon Sancho leaving Manchester United on loan. Happened on deadline day. Raheem Sterling leaving Chelsea on loan. Happened on deadline day. The reason these moves happen so late is because the selling club is asking for a big loan fee, and also they are asking for a lot of the players' wages to be paid. So what the clubs who are interested in the player do is they wait until the last minute, because they play a game of poker, because at the last minute they think we'll get a much better deal. Now, hats off to Everton, because Everton have turned around and say, let's not mess around. We're not interested in playing poker. We just want Jack Grealish. We're going to put our money on the table. We're going to sell our vision to the player. Then it's up to the player himself to decide whether he wants to come to Everton or not. And also, hats off to Jack Grealish, because he's not messing around either. He wants to play football immediately. What he wants to do is be playing week in, week out. Obviously, he wasn't going to do that at Manchester City. Now, one of the reasons he wants to play regularly is he wants to get back in the England squad as soon as possible. And by playing for Everton now, I think that gives him a chance of being in the England squad next month for the games against Serbia and Andorra. So I think it's good news for Everton. Fantastic signing. If I was an Everton fan, I'd be going down to the club shop to buy myself a Everton shirt with Grealish's name on the back. I think he's going to have a real positive impact to Everton this season. And I think it's a great move for Jack Grealish as well. Because for whatever reason, it hasn't worked out for him recently at Manchester City. He's a player who needs an arm round his shoulder. He's a player who needs to be playing regularly. He needs to be the main man. I don't think he was going to be that at City under Pep Guardiola. And I think David Moyes perhaps will be able to get the best out of him.
Yeah, I think a lot of City fans will be sad to see him go. Who else?
Player.
Yeah, who else might be on the way out at City?
Savinho. I mean, if you told me a couple of days ago that we'd be talking about the possibility of Savinho leaving Manchester City, I would have thought you were joking. Now, I still don't necessarily think he's going to leave Manchester City because, one, Manchester City don't want to sell him. Two, if he was to leave, it would have to be for a big, big price. I'm talking about something over £50 million, probably double what City paid for him last summer. Tottenham are interested in signing him. They've held talks about signing him, but I think it's going to be a difficult signing for Spurs to pull off because he's an exceptional player. Pep Guardiola rates him very, very highly. If you look at the number of minutes he plays, the number of games he plays, he's one of Pep Guardiola's favourite players, and he's only 21 years. Why would you sign a player as good as Savinho, somebody who is so young, if you're building a new side? Of course, we know that City need to sell some players, but I wouldn't have thought Savinho would be one who they'd want to part with.
Started 3 of the 4 games at the Club World Cup. That doesn't seem like a club that want to sell him, does it?
No, not at all. And he does exactly what Pep Guardiola wants him to do. You know, some sort of wide players get a little bit frustrated. They sometimes maybe think Pep Guardiola's way of playing, especially for wide players, is too rigid. They want to express themselves more. They don't want to track back and work as hard defensively as Pep Guardiola wants them to do. Watching Savinho play under Pep Guardiola, I think he is a Pep Guardiola kind of player, and I would be surprised if he was to leave City. It could happen, but it's got to be for more than £50 million.
Yeah, indeed. All right, let's get the very latest on Alexander Isak's future now. Let's go to St James's Park. Keith Downey is there for us. Keith, here we go again. You, me, Alexander Isak. What's the latest?
Look, Mike, not really too much has changed since we last spoke about 5 minutes ago. No, since we last spoke, I think at the tail end of last week, as we saw, Alexander Isak was left out of the Newcastle, both the Newcastle squads that played here in St James's Park on Friday night and then Saturday in their last 2 friendly matches before the start of the season. And of course, Eddie Howe fielded questions on it after both of those games. His words were that he can't select Alexander Isak right now, and he would love to do that, and if he could change things or change Alexander Isak's mind, he said he would have done it yesterday. So he didn't go as far as saying Alexander Isak is refusing to train or refusing to play, but he made it clear, you know, reading between the lines, that Isak's head is probably not in the right place for him to be performing for Newcastle United at the moment, and that is why he is essentially training on his own. I don't think he's seen any of his teammates really since he returned from his self-imposed training visit over to Real Sociedad, when of course he went out there for a week on his own. The rest of the players have all been training as normal in the mornings, and Alexander Isak's been turning up round about 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon to put himself through his own paces. So look, it's becoming a bit of a toxic situation, isn't it? Not what Newcastle want ahead of the new season, and Eddie Howe says he doesn't see that changing ahead of their trip to Villa Park in the season opener on Saturday lunchtime. I don't think we're going to see anything definitive to this situation until the transfer window is closed. We know Liverpool have made one bid, £110 million plus add-ons. That was flatly rejected by Newcastle, and I've been saying for a number of weeks now, Newcastle will only allow Alexander Isak to go if, one, they receive a huge offer that they can't refuse, I think anything round about £150 million, and two, they're able to get a ready-made replacement. They tried and failed for Benjamin Sesko last week. Of course, he went to Manchester United, and it feels like the options for Newcastle are now very thin on the ground. So I think as the days go on, it's becoming increasingly likely that Alexander Isak will remain a Newcastle United player this window. And of course, bridges are going to have to be mended, because the Newcastle fans are not happy with what they've seen from his conduct over the last couple of weeks. So it feels like a lot of work is going to have to be done behind the scenes to ensure that they can get together. Newcastle need him, he needs Newcastle, and move on into the start of the season.
Keith, those bridges will be bigger than the Tyne Bridge, I reckon. Let's talk Johan Wissa. Any movement on that one?
Yeah, well, look, Mike, this is becoming a bit of a saga as well. Newcastle desperate to bring him in. He's desperate to come here to Newcastle. Of course, as we know, he's not been involved with Brentford in their last couple of pre-season friendlies or really in training either. We're told that Brentford want to bring in a replacement first before allowing him to leave. Not dissimilar, really, from the Alexander Isak situation here. But again, this one has dragged on for a couple of weeks too. I think if Newcastle had their way, they would like to have him in before the match against Aston Villa on Saturday. Look, there still is a chance of that, but it's a domino effect, isn't it? Because they are waiting on Brentford bringing someone else in themselves, and of course they then need to agree a fee with Brentford. But it's been a protracted one, that one. But I still do expect him to sign for Newcastle. It's just not been quite as simple as many would have hoped.
OK, and what about at the other end of the pitch, in defence? One in, one out, is that the situation?
Well, definitely one in the shape of Malik Chow. He arrived late last night into the northeast to undergo his medical today. That's after Newcastle struck a deal with AC Milan at the weekend. They've been scouting this player for a number of years. They've been to watch him live 8 times, and Andy Howe, who's led negotiations in this, has actually been over to Italy to meet AC Milan twice throughout the summer. So it looks like they've managed to land their man in a deal round about £35 million. So that's the central defender they've been looking for a long time. You asked me about one out. I think you're alluding there to Kieran Trippier. I'm not saying that he's going to leave, but my information is that AS Monaco are interested in the Newcastle right back and are hoping to explore a deal. Now, I don't think Newcastle will want to lose Kieran Trippier. He's a vital cog within the club. You know, he's one of the go-to players for Eddie Howe in terms of his leadership behind the scenes. And of course, remember, he was the first signing after the takeover, the PIF takeover back in October 2021, and he's helped attract a number of players to the squad. So Newcastle will not want to lose him because they're a little bit light at the back at the moment, but some definite interest there from AS Monaco in his services. Remember, he's only got 1 year left on his Newcastle United contract.
Keith, for the moment, thank you. What we'll do is we'll come back to you and we'll talk Sunderland after the break, who are having no trouble getting people in the door. But for the moment, thank you. Right, when we come back, we're going to talk Crystal Palace, demoted to the Conference League. Does that mean they're going to lose some of their star players? We'll discuss that next on The Transfer Show. See you in a bit. Hello again, nice to have you with us in the transfer show. Right, Crystal Palace have lost their appeal against being demoted from the Europa League, and so they'll play in the Conference League this season. What's the knock-on on transfers? That's what we want to know. I'm going to throw some names at you. Mark Gay.
Well, look, you heard from the Palace chairman yesterday, Steve Parish, speaking at Wembley after they won the Community Shield. Mark Gahey has 1 year left on his contract. Now, Palace need him either to sign a new contract or they will reluctantly have to sell him this summer. Does that mean that a club is going to be able to sign him on the cheap? No, I don't think it does. We know clubs in the past, like Newcastle, like Spurs, have been interested in signing him. He's been linked with a move to Liverpool as well. I still think it's going to take big money to sign him.
But Palace can't let him go for free next season, Carvey.
Well,
they can't play that game.
But look at it from the player's perspective. Just because Palace want to sell him, it doesn't mean that he has to leave Palace. Because maybe he's thinking, I would rather wait until next summer when I'm a free agent, because we know big clubs in Europe are willing to sign him as a free agent next summer. So it's an interesting situation. I think Steve Parish is pretty realistic. He knows there's a lot of interest in Mark Gahey. To be fair to Mark Gahey, I don't sense he is a player who is saying to Steve Parish, look, we've lost this appeal, we're going into the Conference League, I'm too good for the Conference League, I need to be playing Champions League football. He's not that kind of player.
But he could be playing Champions League football's the point.
Well, he could if a club make a good enough offer to tempt Crystal Palace to sell him. Crystal Palace have to be realistic. But Steve Parish, I've got to tell you, is not an easy person to negotiate with. You know, people have tried signing players from Crystal Palace before and have found it very, very difficult. My sense is, at the moment, though, Steve Parish is realistic. He knows that time is running out in the transfer window. Palace are not in the Europa League. Players need to come in, and maybe 1 or 2 players will have to leave as well.
Yeah, as you say, he's not an easy man to negotiate with, but he hasn't got the cards with that one. Has he got the cards with Eberer Eze?
Well, he does in the sense that Eze's got longer on his contract. So Crystal Palace don't have to sell him. He had a release clause in his contract, which I think has now expired. Now, I know a lot of Arsenal supporters, they would love to sign Eze in the next couple of weeks.
The player.
He's a fantastic player. I think Arsenal, my personal opinion, they've had a fantastic window as well. They've made some incredible signings. Signing Eze would be the icing on the cake. Of course, he was at Arsenal when he was a kid as well. But I think it's going to cost big money, and I don't know if Arsenal are going to make the kind of bid that is going to tempt Crystal Palace to sell him. Again, look at the scenes yesterday at Wembley. Look at the way Eze celebrated with all his teammates. Look at the unity within that squad. He's not a player who's ringing up Steve Parish today saying, oh, we're not in the Europa League, I'm out of here. I don't think he's that kind of character. I think it's up to the clubs who are interested in him to make a big offer. And then if they do make a big offer, I'm sure Steve Parish and the other directors at Crystal Palace will have a look at it and judge it on its merits.
Another name for you, Jean-Philippe Mateta.
One of my favourite players in the Premier League. He's just like an old-school, old-fashioned target man. You know, he's a cult hero at Selhurst Park, works his socks off, runs the channel. He's a brilliant finisher, brilliant character as well. Look, a lot of clubs are interested in signing him. Clubs in the Premier League, clubs in Europe as well. I think it'd be a real shame if he was to leave Crystal Palace. Again, I think it would take big money to tempt Crystal Palace to sell him. But just unfortunately, I get the sense that 1 out of these 3 players at least is going to leave Palace over the next couple of weeks. Yes, because you've got to be realistic. Palace have done very, very little business in the transfer window so far. I think they've only spent £3 or £4 million. 1 player, and they've got a goalkeeper on a free transfer as well. They're going to be playing in Europe next season for the first time. They need to make some signings, and that means they're going to have to sell players, or at least 1 player as well.
Kaveh Solokol, thank you very much. All right, let's go back to Sunderland then. They've been really active in this summer transfer window. No problems for them. It's going to keep Keith Downey busy. Keith, I think it's 10 now with this expected new signing. Tell us about it.
I think it's 11 actually. Mike, you might have missed one there. I think a full team of new signings have arrived at the Stadium of Light this summer as Sunderland look to have a real go in their return to the Premier League after 8 years away. And the player you allude to there is Omar Alderete, the Paraguayan central defender, 28 years old. We were at the airport earlier and we managed to see a glimpse of the Paraguayan landing. Arrived by private jet round about noon today before hot footing along to Sunderland to undergo his medical. That after a deal was struck at the weekend, £10.4 million. Plus £1 million in potential add-ons to Getafe. So Sunderland really been looking for a central defender for the majority of the window, and it looks as though they have got that man. But obviously the deal isn't done yet. A couple of deals have got very, very close for them this summer, and they've just fallen through at the very last minute. So they won't be counting their chickens just yet, but he looks like a real imposing central defender and a physical player, someone they will need for the Premier League this season.
Keith, thank you very much. Right, let's talk Chelsea, Carve. More signings there?
I think there will be more signings, but we've been talking about UEFA and Crystal Palace. Chelsea have also come to an agreement with UEFA, which means that they have to balance their transfer spending this summer. So as well as buying players, they have to sell players as well. I hear Chelsea fans saying, why haven't we signed Xavi Simons yet? Why haven't we signed Alejandro Garnacho yet? Because Chelsea need to sell players as well. Yes, they're in talks to sign both of those players, but they can't just throw money around. They have to be very, very careful because they've come to this agreement with UEFA, because they broke UEFA's financial rules. They paid a big, big fine, and as part of their settlement with UEFA said, we're going to be watching you very, very carefully. For every penny that you spend on players, you also have to raise a penny by selling players this summer. That's what Chelsea are trying to do.
We've only got 20 seconds. Nicholas Jackson, are they going to sell him?
They are going to sell him, almost certainly, because he wants
for 80
to leave.
to 100 million pounds?
In an ideal world, but that is not going to happen. He will be sold because he said, I want to leave. And the thing about Nicholas Jackson is he wants to be the main man. He wants to be the main man. And at Chelsea, he's not going to be the main man anymore because they've signed Liam Delap and they've signed João Pedro.
You are definitely the main man. Great to have you back from your world tour, Carve. Carve back with us. Right, when we come back, we'll have the former Crystal Palace captain, Joel Ward, with us to discuss what has happened to them today. See you in a moment. We'll be in the Sports Centre.